Michael, I suppose we want to talk about the impact of diagnosis and when you get the diagnosis. But my understanding is you didn't get your diagnosis early on in your experience.
So it's been quite a while. So I suppose I was admitted first in 2011 when I first had issues with voices and shadows and stuff, and I suppose at that admission there was no diagnosis given, and there's a couple of factors to play in that. I suppose they had to wait and see, number one, but number two, I was also training to be a general nurse at the time, and obviously that would a diagnosis would have an impact on my future prospects in that case. But even when I finished general nursing and was just in a time of my own recovery, they still didn't diagnose me for a while. So it actually took about, I'd say, the guts of a year and a half to diagnose me. And then they kind of said it was psychosis first, and then they kind of built up to that kind of schizophrenic diagnosis. But yeah, that's how it kind of came about. But it took around a year and a bit for all that information to kind of come together to form it.
And not knowing kind of exactly what was going on for about a year, was that difficult for you, or were you okay with it?
It was extremely difficult. I came from the general nursing side where you would get a diagnosis very, very quickly, and you would know what you're dealing with. When I became a service user, I expected the same kind of thing. And I was frustrated an awful lot in the fact that I didn't know what I had. I knew what I was experiencing, but I didn't have a label for it. And for me, kind of being a kind of scientific head on me, I wanted to know everything I could about the diagnosis I've had. And the fact that I wasn't being given one was really frustrating. So when I actually eventually got one, probably done what the stupidest thing anyone could ever do, which was to go to Dr. Google and figure out everything about it. But I eventually learned, the do's and don'ts when it comes to having voices and shadows and stuff. So, and I learned from my own experiences as well. But that period of time when there was no diagnosis, you were looking and you were trying to compare. One day I have bipolar, the next day I have something else, and you weren't really sure. And I was asking the doctor, and he was still kind of hesitant in giving me a diagnosis, because obviously it takes time to build up to it, which I didn't know back then. So yeah, to say there was frustration is probably an understatement. But when I eventually got there, it was finally, there's a name. I'm not actually imagining this in my head. There's actually a name for something that I've been experiencing for so long, and now that I have the name of it, I can be empowered and learn about it, and learn how to effectively combat it in my own life. Not only take medications, but also what kind of techniques I can use to combat voices and shadows.
Yeah. And during that period where you didn't know, you were obviously taking antipsychotic medication.
Yeah.
Did that give you any sort of hint as to what was going on?
It did. The first thing I'd done when I got the antipsychotic medication from the prescription, when I was discharged home for the first time, looking up and just see what was it, and saw this kind of thing saying atypical antipsychotic. And I'm like, what the hell? So looking it up, and that's where the confusion kind of came, because I first, when I looked it up, I was like, oh, am I bipolar? But that doesn't fit me. But am I kind of schizophrenic? That kind of fits me. Or am I schizoaffective? It's kind of like, it was great to know that I was taking an antipsychotic. It was not great to know that there were so many different elements, or so many different disorders, you can call it, that require antipsychotic treatment. So then that just left me baffled, if that makes sense.
And I totally understand why somebody would take a year to diagnose you, but how could they have done that differently in terms of explaining to you what the process was?
I think, well, to be fair, the doctors and the community nurses, they were very, they would let me know a lot of what was going on, but at the same time, I think there needs to be more kind of frank conversation, especially when somebody's coming from a general site to a psych site for the first time. You know, there's stark contrast between the two. So I think there needs to be that kind of conversation with the person you're working with. But I also think there needs to be something within the training, not just for psychiatric nurses or psychiatry, but also in the medical and the general side, to say, okay, just because it takes longer to get a diagnosis here doesn't mean it's less valued. So there needs to be that kind of piece. I'm trying to think what else they could have done. I think instead of trying to be hesitant and trying to say we don't know right now, kind of give me some sort of inkling. You know, this is where we're swaying towards, but don't take it full word as of yet. Or even just say that, okay, Michael, at the moment we're putting you down as an acute psychotic episode, but this could mean different things at different times. So, you know, that kind of conversation would have been extremely helpful. Instead of me trying to go to Dr. Google and trying to figure out, oh, have I this or that or that, you know, because I'm not trained to actually make that assumption, but that's where your mind wanders when you don't know.
And were your family involved in the diagnostic process at all in terms of conversations?
I think they were. I know when I was in the hospital, there was I suppose interviews with my mum especially, to get that kind of third party information of what was I like, you know. And I'm sure my mum kind of explained a hell of a lot of what was going on at that time. I suppose they were involved in that aspect, but I don't feel they were involved any further after that, which I think needs to kind of change in a way as well, because, you know, yes, I have my own journey to go through. I have to live with these things after all, but my family also needs that support as well. So it's kind of trying to support the two of us in this journey. And I know at the moment everything is like, it's all the service user kind of thing, and the family is secondary, but in actual fact they should be the same, on par, because not only have I the journey to go through, but they have the journey to go through as well, and they need to know how best to support me.
And I suppose you've got a good bond with your family. There's a lot of people who become very unwell who don't want family involved. How do you think we can bridge that gap?
That's a difficult question. To be honest, I've heard about this before, but I'm thinking something on the lines of a family peer supporter would be brilliant for that kind of situation, because the family peer support worker doesn't deal with the service user, but actually deals with the family member, has no linkage with the MDT except for maybe a social worker to report things on, but that doesn't be transferred over to the MDT. So in that case, then the family still gets that emotional support that they need, but it is not going against what the service user wishes, if that makes sense. And I think that's really, at the moment, that's really one option. And then the other option is, I suppose, yes, I suppose in areas that don't have family peer support, you know, there used to be this thing, and I know it's coming back as well, is the OLAS program, for example. You know, and the OLAS program has a section for family members, where families can learn about their loved one's diagnosis, and it's an educational session, a series of sessions, and it's really, really useful. There's two options, and then the third option would be, I suppose, yes, you might be constricted from sharing information and all this because of the service user's wishes, which is fair enough. But that doesn't stop you from saying, okay, I can't exactly help you in this aspect, but if you go to, say, the likes of the Recovery College and look up some courses there around looking after yourself when you're looking after someone with a mental health challenge, that's really good. Or going to RAP, or even getting access to other kind of courses that will help you, not necessarily help you help them, but help you help yourself in the process, if that makes sense.
Really important. And just come back to yourself again. You mentioned, so once you had your diagnosis, you went off and you looked at all the resources you could get. Could you kind of highlight the 2 or 3 key things that you feel made a huge difference to you in your recovery?
Oh wow.
Small question.
There was a eureka moment in 2015. I have to go back to 2015, I'm afraid, where, you know, I've done everything the doctors and nurses have told me to do, and I was still feeling crap. And then all of a sudden, there was a moment where I was like, Michael, what are you doing here? And at that moment, I realized what everybody has been trying to tell me for the last 4 years coming up to this point, which was that, you know, everybody can help you out. You can take medications and all this, and they are very important to take. And for me, they're very important for my recovery. However, the vast majority of your process of recovery is up to you. So it's about you taking personal responsibility for your life, for the situation you're in, and also being empowered enough to say, okay, I'm in this shitty situation right now, but I have the power to make this change. And when I actually got that eureka moment, that really changed things in terms of recovery for me. Another aspect for me that really supported me was education. I suppose when I was unwell, the one thing that kept me to the real me, because there was so many versions of me, if you want to consider that, because when the voices kind of were there, you didn't know what was reality and what was not. But what really kept me grounded in reality and really kept me grounded to Michael was reading medical books. It sounds weird, but it connected me back to the inquisitive part of myself that was really still there. And I found that has transpired in my recovery journey as well. To the fact that I went back and I've done study, and I've just got my master's the other day, you know, all that kind of stuff, and I'm hoping to proceed further with that as well. So yeah, that's the second thing. And I suppose the third thing is really the support of my family. And that's, all 3 of them are all on the same level. The support of my family has been immense. When I was at the point of giving up, when I felt that there was no hope for me, I was going to be just a person in the corner forever, they saw me. They saw me as who I was, and they wanted me back. And yes, they pushed and they moaned and they got angry and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, what they were trying to get me to do was to take personal responsibility for myself. And it wasn't until that eureka moment came in that I said, oh shit, I need to take responsibility now. And once I'd done that, my life changed forever.
It's really interesting. The eureka moment, how do we magically get that for everybody else?
That's the $1 million question. I think it's different for everyone. I know for me it was, you know, I had to come to a place where I had done everything that people were telling me I should do, and then coming to a place where I had to realize for myself that, okay, I need to do things for myself here. And that obviously took a long time to happen, and obviously that takes longer for other people. But I suppose all you can do as professionals, as psychiatrists, is be there along that journey, knowing in your head that, okay, we need to get them to this eureka moment, but they need to figure that out for themselves as well. And all you can do in that process is just be there, support the person the best you can, you know, and give them access to as much resources as possible. But they be there as that support, and then eventually with the hope that the person will get there for themselves and figure out, yes, now I need to take responsibility. But unfortunately, there's no magic answer about how to get to that place.
Thank you very much.